Hello and welcome to the Granny Circle tutorial. These are our tools that we will be using in our tutorial. A pair of scissors, a crochet hook, which is a G 4.00 millimeter, and a tapestry needle. This is a needle with a large eye to allow the yarn to go through smoothly. Here is our yarn. I'm using 3 colors. The first one is by Vanna's Choice, Lions brand, in the color Fern. Second one I have is by Michael's Impeckables in the color Butterscotch. The third one that I have is Red Heart Super Saver in the color White. We will be using the color white to begin with. Now before we start our crochet, we like to have a small amount of yarn to come out of our skein. The reason being is sometimes when we pull it out, it can get hung up inside the skein. So if we pull about 2-3 feet of yarn out, it will help make the tension and our stitches look uniform and in balance. We're going to be starting to make our circle with a magic circle. A magic circle is where you take some of your yarn and you create a circle, and after your stitches are put on, you pull it so that it is tight in the center. But all magic circles have a tail. The reason I'm going to request that you add at least 8 inches of yarn before you start your magic circle. The reason being, with our tapestry needle, we want to have enough yarn to go at least 2 to 3 times the length of our needle so that we have enough to weave in our ends. So pull out a good amount of yarn, about 8 inches, and let's begin. To make our magic circle, we're going to ensure that we have the 8 inches of yarn. Now I am right-handed, so I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to place it between my finger and my thumb. I'm going to wrap it over my 2 fingers. And then when I bring the yarn back over, it's going to crisscross over the yarn that I had held previously. So I'm going to place my thumb on top of the center of the X, excuse me, and I'm going to take my hook, I'm going to turn my hand just a little bit, I'm going to go under, and I'm going to grab, the hook is aiming down, I'm going to grab the yarn and pull it through, and I'm going to twist it just a little bit. You'll notice now that my hook is up. Then take your hook and go under the yarn that we had pulled through and pull it through that loop that's on your hook. It may seem cumbersome, but it does work. Okay, so here we have our magic circle. Now let's go ahead and tighten this loop that we just put on here. So pinch with your right hand one side of the circle and with your left hand, and then have the yarn up here, and we're going to pull in all 3 directions, and that'll help tighten that loop that we had on our magic circle. If your tail has twisted like mine, go ahead and grab it and pull it through, And here we're ready to start our tutorial. Now I'm holding my hook and my magic circle in my right hand. One of the biggest things that we have with crochet is tension. We want to make sure that as we hold the yarn in our other hand that we have the yarn coming freely so that the hook can create the stitching, and make sure that the stitching looks uniform and not sloppy. So my suggestion, there are many ways of holding the yarn, but my suggestion is with your hand flat in front of you, take the yarn and come between your little finger and your ring finger and bring it down towards the table. Okay? Then as you go in a circular motion, come up. Let me get my hands out of the way. Come across those 3 fingers and go in between your pointer finger and your second finger. Close your fingers and twist your hand back. Now let the yarn go freely. Your little finger will help control the tension, and you will not have to tighten those muscles because your fingers just normally just hang together anyway. And this is how I wrap my hand so that I can have good tension. The space in between here is the working space. The yarn that we're providing from the skein is called the working yarn. So let's go ahead and begin. We're going to chain 3. To make a chain, we already have our 1 loop on the hook, and that was from our magic circle. We're going to take our hook and come around, and you notice how I twist that hook down so the hook is facing up, and now it's coming down, and it's going to go through the loop that was on our hook. Now if you pull the loop too tight, it'll be so hard to get it through, so try to keep your yarn loose enough so that it will go through evenly. We're going to make 2 more chains. So with our hook facing up, we're going to go around the yarn, twist it down, and go through the loop that was on our hook. Let's do it one more time. Our hook is facing up. We're going to wrap it around. As I do that, I twist the hook and it faces down, and it brings that yarn through the loop that was on my hook. We now have 3 chains. This chain, and this chain are completed chains. The one that's on the hook is not complete. So whenever you count chains, you do not count the chain that is on the hook. You count the completed chains. So here we have 1, 2, and 3. So in this particular case, because we've gone up 3 chains, this is going to be a pretend double crochet because of the height and the width. So to begin our circle, we're going to make what is called double crochet clusters. The reason being is because we will be placing a lot of stitches inside this circle, and we want to have enough room at the top so that we can add additional stitching. So if you have participated in other tutorials from this series, the beginning of this one will be different. So let's begin. We're going to place our finger on top of the loop that's on the hook, and we're going to wrap it around, and we're going to take the hook and go through the circle. We're going to pick up the working yarn, and we're going to pull it back so that now we have 3 loops on our hook. We're going to take the yarn and pull it through those 2 loops that are on the hook and stop right there. So this is what we have so far. This is not a completed double crochet. We will complete in the next row. This is row 1, so the completed ones will start in row 2. So you're learning a little bit more advanced beginners, but I think you'll do just fine. Okay, so now place your finger on top of these loops, and we're going to do another one. We're going to wrap the yarn around, and now we're going to take that hook and go through the center of that magic circle and pick up our working yarn and bring it back to create a loop. You now have 4 loops on your hook. Okay, you can remove your finger because everything there is on there. It's not going to go anywhere. So now take your hook, wrap it around, and go through just 2 loops. Okay, we've created half of a second double crochet. So now we're going to complete this particular one, and we're going to take the yarn and go over, and now we're going to go through all 3 loops. Notice how my hook is facing down, and we'll go through all 3. You have just created a double crochet cluster that has the 3 double crochets in it. Now we're going to chain 2. So with our loop that we have on our hook, we're going to take our hook, we're going to wrap it around, pull it through, we have 1 chain. Take our yarn, our hook around the yarn, pull it through, we now have 2 chains. I wanted to stop for just a second so that you can see that this is what we have. So I'm going to pull this loop up just a little bit to remove my hook so we can review what we have just done. We have chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we have the double crochet that we started but we did not complete. That was our first one. Our second one we started and we did complete when we took through all 3 of those loops, and then we chained 2. We are going to be doing another set of clusters, but it will not include the chain. The chain was at the beginning of the row to give the height that we need. So I will show you how to do the cluster in the next one. Alright, so let's move on to our second double crochet cluster. This will be where we start our repeat. Our repeat is where we do the same stitching over and over again. You'll notice that because this one has a chain in it, I did not use the word repeat. So we're going to start our double crochet cluster that will have the 3 that we desire for this particular pattern. So we're going to place our finger on our loop, we're going to wrap our yarn around, we're going to go through the center of the circle, we're going to pull up a loop, we're going to snug it all down just a little bit. You'll notice that's where your tightening of your little finger comes in handy. We're going to wrap it around and go through 2. We have 2 loops on the hook now. I'm working on better camera range, honest. I'm using a GoPro camera, so I'm limited on close-ups, but I love this camera because I can get in real close or far away and it'll always stay in focus. Not to promote GoPro, I highly like them and I highly recommend them, but this is the camera I use. And sometimes I get out of camera range. So let's move on. We have our 2 loops on the hook. I'm going to place my finger over them, and I'm going to wrap my yarn around and go back into the center, and I'm going to pull up a loop, and I'm going to yarn over and go through 2 loops on the hook, and I'm going to stop. I am not going to complete this stitch just yet. So now I have 3 loops on the hook. So let's place our finger down, and we're going to do one more time. Yarn over the hook, take the hook and go through the center and pull the yarn up. Okay, now we're going to go yarn over and pull through the 2 loops only that are on the hook. So now we have 4 loops on the hook. Remember, it wasn't like our first one where we had 3 because we had the chain stitch. So now to complete this, you're going to like this. We're going to take the yarn and go over. Now remember to aim your hook down and go through all 4 of those loops, and then with your finger pull back on your hook, and that'll help tighten that tension. And then we're going to chain 2. 1 and 2. Now let's look at what we have. Okay. This is not our repeat. This begins our repeat. So we started with the double crochet where we did not complete the full stitch. We did it 3 times. We ended up with the 4 loops on the hook, and then we pulled the hook through with the yarn to complete that, and then chain 1 and 2. I'm going to explain to you the reasons why I've used this, because you'll notice at the top it's narrow compared to at the bottom where it's not. You'll find that sometimes in crochet for future projects you have to alter the stitch that you desire a little bit more to make it fit the work that you have. So here we have this, and we're going to continue on. I would like to remind you that during the process of learning how to do this, to not feel frustration. Anytime you start a new project, if it's not something that you're familiar with, sometimes it just takes a little practice to try and make it so that you can get it better. It takes 3 or 4 times of trying. So I'm going to let you know we're going to do this, let's see, 4 more times. So by the end of this row you should have this double crochet cluster of 3 down pat. So we're going to move on to our next cluster, which is the repeat again. So place your finger on the loop on your hook and wrap it around your hook, the yarn, go through the center, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the 2 loops on the hook, and stop. You have 2 loops on your hook. Place your finger on top of those loops, yarn over, take the hook and go through the center again, draw up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2 loops again. We now have 3 loops on the hook. Place your finger on top of those loops, wrap the yarn over, go through the center of the circle, pull up a loop, yarn over through 2 loops. We now have 4 loops on the hook. What's next? That's right, we're going to take the yarn and go through all 4. Remember to twist your hook to go down after you got your yarn on it. Go down and go through all 4. And then tighten it up with your finger. You got your hook over here. Pull it back with your finger, and that'll help tighten that loop up on the hook. Yarn over. We're doing our chain stitch. We have 1, yarn over, chain number 2. Okay, so this is what we have. We have 3 of them on there. We got 3 more to go. So now, if you notice, I'm sliding my work over. You can do that. That's fine. Let's make our second one, or our 4th one. Yarn over through the center, pull up a loop. I will start to speed up a little bit because I think after doing this quite a few times, I think you'll have it. Pull it through, place your finger, yarn over, hook through the center of the circle, pull up a loop, yarn over, through the 2 loops on the hook. We now have 3 loops on our hook. Yarn over, through the center of the circle, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops on the hook. We now have 4 loops on our hook. To complete this, we're going to go yarn over and pull through all 4 of the loops on the hook, tighten with our finger to the hook, chain 1, chain 2. And this is what we have. So, do you think you have the swing of it? Let's try it again. Place your finger on the loop that's on the hook, wrap it around, go through the center of the circle, and drop a loop. Yarn over through the 2 loops on the hook. Place your finger on the new loop, yarn over, go through the center, pull up a loop, yarn over through 2 loops. We now have 3 loops on the hook. Okay? Notice I didn't say anything? Because I know you can do it now. Okay, and yarn over through all 4. Tighten it, chain 2. 1 and 2. And here's what we have. Our magic circle's getting filled up, isn't it? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? We have 1 more to do. I think I've shown you many times. I would like for you to do the cluster number 6 by yourself, so I'm not going to show you. I want you to do this on your own, and I'll see you in just a second. So, how did you do? I'm sure you did great. Alright, at the end of our cluster, we're not going to chain 2. So if you did chain 2, carefully remove those 2 stitches. I guess I should have told you that ahead of time. When we come to an end of a row, sometimes we can use different techniques to complete our row. So with your hook still in that last loop that closed or that finished our cluster here, we're going to take our tail and we're going to take our 2 fingers on our right hand and pinch, not hard, but just enough to hold them in place, and then we're going to take our tail and we're going to pull. Pull it till you have a circle that's small. It doesn't have to be super tight, because if you pull this too hard, it can break. Do not cut this tail. We're going to weave it in. If you cut this tail, everything that you did in here will come out. Okay, so we're going to take our tail and bring it towards us and just let it drop. We use chain stitches to go for height, and sometimes we can use stitches to replace the chain stitch that we would normally stick in, as like we did here with the chain 2 between our clusters. Since I know the height of many stitches, I'm going to show you how to do a half double crochet, not the same kind that we did in our cluster. Those were not completed double crochets. A half double crochet is a little bit smaller than the regular double crochet, and that's how it gets its name. So place your finger on your loop, wrap it around once, and at the top of that chain 3, place your hook into the center. Try to pick up 2 loops from that chain, because sometimes when you pick up only one, it can cause the stitch to become distorted. So here we have our loop, our wrap. Now we're going to wrap it and pull up a loop, and we have 3 chains on the hook. So to create a half double crochet, we're going to yarn over, twist our hook down, and we're going to go through all 3 of those loops on the hook. This stitch has now created the spacing for a chain 2, and we can crochet over the top of that. So we are going to move on to row 2. We have completed row 1. So we're going to build up so we can get the height that we need, and when we need that, we do chain stitches, just like we did when we first started the center row. So yarn over through the loop on the hook, yarn over through the loop on the hook. One more time, we're going to chain 3. Now you notice we have an opening here. This is called a space. In that space, we're going to be placing many double crochets. The first row that we did was not a complete double crochet, so this row I will show you how to do complete double crochets. This chain 3, since it is the same height as a double crochet, will count as 1 double crochet. So place your finger on top of the loop, yarn over, go through that space, draw up a loop. You now have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, and we're going to complete this double crochet, yarn over, pull through 2. That is 1 double crochet. Let's do it again. Place your finger on that loop, yarn over, go through the space, draw up a loop, yarn over, through 2, yarn over, through 2. Remember to twist your hook, because when you have it down, it won't snag as easily as if you had it up. See how it would catch it? So if you have it down, the pressure is up and you can pull it through. Okay, so since our chain 3 is a pretend double crochet, we now have 2 extras. We have 3, which is called our granny. A lot of people call them clusters and shells and groups and sets. I call it a granny because we're making a granny circle. Okay, so now we can slide everybody over because we're going to add some more. But between our grannies here, we're going to chain 2. 1 and 2. So in the same space, we're going to add 3 more double crochets. So place your finger on top of the loop on the hook, yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. You completed 1 double crochet. Finger on the loop, yarn over, hook through the space, draw up a loop, yarn over through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over through the last 2 loops on the hook. Okay? I think you're getting the hang of this, so I'm not going to say how to do the steps to do a double crochet. So let's go ahead and do it together. There you go. We have 2 grannies in this one space. Okay, let's chain 1. In our next space, which will go over our cluster from the previous row, we're going to be placing 2 grannies like we just did here. So yarn over through that space, drop your loop, through 2, through 2. There's 1. We're still doing our double crochets. There's 2. And there's 3. Okay? We notice how our stitches are getting a little tight here, so we'll go ahead and pull them over, chain 2, and in the same space we're going to do 1 more granny. A granny consists of 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Hopefully by the end of this video you'll be a master at making grannies. When I was young, this was the very first block I learned how to crochet with my grandmother. Okay, let's move on. So here we have our next space, and we're going to add the 2 grannies again. So, do you think you can do it without me telling you what to do? Here's 1 double crochet. There's 2 double crochets. 3. Slide, chain 2, 3 double crochets, or our second granny. Okay, so we have 2 here done. I'm going to chain 1 between these 2. Now we have 3 left. I'm going to let you do those by yourself. We have in our 2 grannies, we have 3, chain 2, and then 3. Before you move on to the next granny, you only want to chain 1. Go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you when you finish right here. Remember your spaces. I know you can do this. I'll see you then. So, does yours look like mine? Kind of looks like a hexagon, doesn't it? But it will be transformed into a circle here shortly. At the end, we still have our opening. We're going to close it off so that we can go ahead and change to another color. We're going to count our chain stitches from the granny that's across from it, and at the top of the chain 3, pick up the 2 stitches, draw up a loop, and then take that loop and go through. This gives the equivalent of 1 chain without making a chain stitch. With your scissors, cut an 8-inch tail. That way we'll have enough for when we sew it. And then draw your hook, pull the loop through, and tighten it down. Okay, so this is what we have so far. We're going to get out our tapestry needle, and we're going to flip our work over, and we're going to work on the magic circle tail. So to put the needle, I'm thinking too fast, sorry. To put the yarn into the eye of the needle, take the yarn and come through your fingers so that you have it kind of taut through here. Make your needle come up from the bottom and pinch it down together tightly. You will have this little tiny folded piece of yarn, so place the eye of your needle over the top of it and wiggle it around, and it will go through easily. If you use the cut end, it will fray and cause your yarn to become distorted. You don't want that. You just want to weave in your ends, so let's try and make it as easy as possible. Now when our tail came out from our magic circle, it came from this direction. So we're going to go in the same clockwise direction, and we're going to go through the center of the stitches as close to the center of that circle as possible. So take your yarn and go through, pull it tight, not too tight that it breaks, just snug it up, and then take your needle and go through the center of the rest of these stitches. Sometimes you have to wiggle your needle around. And here I got my last 2. Okay. And there we go. See, when you have that extra circle in there, you can tighten it up, and your circle is even smaller than what it was when we originally started. To weave in this end, I'm going to go over the top of that yarn right there, and I'm going to go backwards. So I'm going to go counterclockwise, and I'm going to go back through a section of stitches, and then I'm going to go clockwise again, and I'm going to hit over that one yarn, because if you go back through the same hole, you're not creating a back place. Okay, and let's cut our yarn. So now our magic circle is safe and tight. The next color I will be using is my yellow yarn, and as suggested before, I like to pull quite a bit of yarn out from my skein, so that way, if in case you meet a snag inside your skein, it won't interrupt your stitching. Okay, so to begin this row, we are not going to make a magic circle. We're going to make a slip knot. So with our tail, we want to have a good sized tail like before. We're going to take it and wrap it around our finger, just the one finger, like we did with the magic circle. You can take this one and raise it up just a little bit, and then the yarn that crisscrossed over the top, take this one and pull it through, and then just tighten it. Then take our hook and go through the center of the loop, and we're going to tighten it down. Take your yarn, wrap it around your fingers, and we're ready to go. I was playing with all this stuff here. Now, this row we can start anywhere, okay? We're not going to be making two grannies in one space. This row we're just going to be making one granny per space. So to get started, we're going to find a space between our three double crochets, or one granny. It could be outside of a corner or in a corner. Well, I didn't tell you these were corners, so we'll get to that point later. So most of the time when you do a granny, if you have two in one space, that's designating a corner. This particular case, we needed two in each one to create a circle, even though it does look like a hexagon. As we build onto this, it will start to look like a circle. So I'm just going to pick up the chain one space, or the chain two, and with my finger on my loop on the hook, I'm going to insert my hook, draw up a loop, and I'm going to take that loop and go through the loop that was already on my hook and tighten it down. We're going to chain three. 1, 2, and 3. This counts as one double crochet. So let's place 2 double crochets in this space. There's 1 and there's 2. Now we're going to move on to our next space, but first we're going to chain 1, and then we need to locate that next chain, that next space. You can always count your double crochets, and there's our next space. 3 over, you should have an opening. Because there are so many stitches in the center, it will seem a little tight, and that's the reason why it seems like you can't really find it easily. But sometimes you just count your stitches over and you'll find it that way. So here I've created 1 double crochet. We're going to place 2 more to complete our granny here. Chain 1. In this space, which is our chain 2 space, we're going to place 1 granny. Chain 1. Here I have my tail. I'm just going to let it drop. I'm not going to include it into any part of my crochet at this time. It will be woven in later. So in this space that we have here, 1 granny, which is 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And chain 1. Okay, continue on around 3 double crochets in the one space, chain 1, in the next space 3 double crochets and a chain 1. If you have a hard time finding, remember to count over 3 stitches and then see if it has that opening that you need there. So this row will be nothing but one granny per space with a chain 1 in between. And I'll meet you right back here at your last granny. Do not chain 1. Alright, so how did you do? I'm sure you have this down pat by now, huh? But don't be fooled. As we go up, you will be surprised. Let's put it that way. Okay, so I got here to the end of at my last granny. The reason why I asked you not to complete with a chain 1 is because we're going to go up a row. So in order to go up a row, we always want to have where our stitches can stay in the same spot. So we're going to do a single crochet, and to do a single crochet, first we want to find our location of where we want to place our hook. So at the top of the chain 3, 1, 2, 3, we want to insert the hook into the center of the chain, remembering to pick up the 2 parts of the chain and draw up a loop. A single crochet did not require any wrap overs or anything. So now that we have our 2 loops on the hook, we're going to complete our single crochet. And this gives us the space of 1 chain. If you look back, you can see that 1 chain. Or over the top, you can see that 1 chain. Now to move up to the height we need for our next row, what do? It's right here. Chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. So now in this same space, we're going to add 2 double crochets. You're going to go over the top of that single crochet. There's 1, and there's 2. Remember, the chain 3 does count as 1 single crochet. Sometimes my tails get caught up in my working yarn, so I need to pull more from my skein. Okay. Now, moving on to our next space, we're going to chain 2. 1, 2. Why not chain 1? Well, because as we build up, depending on how many stitches that we have, and to get the shape that we need, will depend on how much space we need in between. In this row here, we needed a very little space because this row down here was tight. So that's why we had the chain 1. In this particular one, we're going to use more space, or need more space. So in our next chain 1 space, we're just going to add 3 double crochets, and then we're going to chain 2. One, 2. Okay. Moving on to our next space. Are you getting ahead of me? I think you are. It's okay. If you understand this while I'm sitting explaining it, it's okay. Okay, so we did another granny. We're going to chain 2. Now I'm going to let you have off at it. You go ahead and complete all the way around until you get to this last space. And just before you finish, I'm going to show you how to finish. We're going to change colors after this particular row, and don't think that you're going to do just 1 granny in the circle around and chain 3, because that is not correct. I'm going to show you what we're going to do, and then I'll show you how to repeat it in case you wanted to make a larger one. So how do you like our circle now? It's coming along, isn't it? Looks nice. So to finish this particular color, we're going to chain 1, and then at the top of our chain 3 we're going to make a slip stitch. So go through the center, draw up a loop, and then to complete the stitch, draw through the loop that's already on the hook. Okay, and with our scissors, make yourself a little tail, and then yarn over and pull it through that last loop and tighten it down. And here we have our circle. Okay, we're going to move on to our next color. And do you think you're going to do 1 and chain 3? I got a surprise for you. No, we're not. So think about that for a second, and I'm going to use my green color yarn. So go ahead and get ready, and I'll see you in a second. Well, I have my green yarn ready, but I sat here thinking, look at all these tails. Ooh, hoo, hoo, hoo. They're in my way. So let's get rid of some of them. So let's go ahead and put our yarn onto our needle. Remember, fold it up, tighten it down, take the folded end through the eye of the needle. Okay, so this white one came out from between the yellow. I want to stay with the white yarn. So I'm going to pick up the back of one of these stitches, and I'm going to go to the center of the bottom of these stitches. Okay, so now I'm going to go through where I pick up all of those. I'm going to take my needle through. Now to come back, I'm going to go over 1 and go through. That over the 1 will help make it so that it doesn't come back out the way I came in. And then I'm going to go over 1 and go through there again. Okay, and then stretch it just a little bit, and that'll lock that in place, and cut it. And you can't really even tell where it was at. Go ahead and do that for the yellow one. The yellow one that we ended at the end of the row, we'll save that one for later, but go ahead and do this one, and I'll see you in a second. So, you ready to add your next color? Okay, here with the green, we're going to have a little tail here, and we're going to start with a slip knot. Here I'm going to raise it up, go over. Did I do that too fast? Let me do it the right way for you. Okay, make an X on your finger. You can take your hook and go under it and just pull it through, and then take that loop off your finger and tighten the loop onto the yarn. And there we have our slip knot. Now I'm going to wrap the yarn around my hand so I can control my tension. And in any location that you want, you can pick up at any space around. I'm going to pick up this one right here, and I drew up a loop, snug it down a little, and go through the loop and create that slip stitch onto the chain and snug it up a little. Now we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. In this space we're going to do 2 grannies. So double crochet after our chain 3. There's 1 and there's 2. Chain 2. 1, 2. And in the same space we're going to do our second granny. 1, 2, and 3. chain 2. 1, 2. Now, how many grannies do you think get in this next hole? 1 or 2? If you said 2, you're correct. We're going to be placing 2 grannies in each one of our spaces around with chain 2 in between the 2 and chain 2 before you go to the next space. So we're going to do 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. Basically all you got to remember now is 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2. But remember to place 2 in each space. Here's 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. Okay? So as you go around, we're going to do 2 grannies in each space. Continue around until you get to this last space right here, and I'll show you how to finish off and tell you if you wanted to make this circle even larger, how to do so. Doesn't this look like a really nice circle? Here we are at the end of our row. In this particular one, we have 1 row, 2 rows, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, let's go ahead and finish. We have our last 2 grannies. We're going to chain 1, and in the top of the chain 3, we're going to place a slip stitch. Here I grabbed 1. You see how it stretched out a little too much. I don't want 1, I want 2. So here I picked up 2, drew up a loop, and take that loop through the loop that was on my hook. Cut a tail, and I'm going to draw that yarn through the loop and tighten it down. So here we have our circle. Now if you wanted to make your circle even larger, you'll notice here that I have the 1 row of 1 granny per hole, which here you can put 1, 1, and 1. And the second row you would do the same thing. So our repeat to make our granny even larger would be after this row, the same as the second row here, to add 1 per space with a chain 2 in between. Your second row past this would be 1 with a chain 2. The third row be just like our green row that we did here. So you can make this even larger. It is versatile. You can make a nice round blanket for your bed, for your kids, or move on, and in future videos I'll probably show you how to make a square after making a circle. But for this granny tutorial in the beginning series, I wanted to show you how to make various shapes. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you spending your time with me and learning with me as we create our different shapes for this granny tutorial. Keep on crocheting and have a great day.